All right. Good morning. Morning, Phil. I think we're still waiting for some people to join, but this is actually one of our earliest tackling SAP Security Together, which is always fun. But I think for you, Phil, it's still not early.
It's 5 p.m.
Oh, wow. Okay. Different time.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, to whoever is here, welcome to our or this month's Tackling SAP Security Together event. We have been on a summer break in August and July, so we're kicking off September with an interesting topic, I believe, for everyone. Of course, we will continue next month as well with the Tackling SAP Security Together event. And probably get a small break in December. But without further ado, maybe I give the mic to Phil to present himself, our guest for this morning or for the afternoon for Phil. Maybe a few minutes, Phil, from your side, who you are, what you guys do, so on and so forth.
Yeah, thanks for saying. So, Phil Shipley, currently CTO at SAP Software. Also a director at Compliant ERP. So we actually have two separate businesses, one focused on security consulting and one focused on access control software. So I guess we'll be touching on both topics, well, both offerings as part of this conversation. We started security consulting back in 2013, so they've been going quite some time. We're still a niche consultancy here in Australia, but we're 25 people, senior consultants and various skill sets across all things to do with access, risk, compliance, governance, identity, all those sorts of things. So, yeah, I guess, and then at some point, I think it was around 2018, we decided a lot of customers don't want GRC. A lot of customers don't need the big, complex, and expensive SAP offering when they need to go and find an access control solution. We looked at others out in the market and thought, let's build our own. So yeah, that's what we've been doing ever since. And hopefully we can talk a bit more about that offering today.
Amazing. I mean, we are going to touch bases on most of these stuff during our session today. Definitely a topic where when I first got into the SAP world, all I heard SAP security is all about roles and authorizations. And now we bring the expert to talk about that. But it is good to have you here today with us in the session. What we're going to speak about today for everyone is around how we can turn this complete chaos when it comes to roles and authorizations into actionable, pragmatic. Oh, that word just is a tongue twister. But how we can turn that into actual action and how we can really benefit from the different areas that are already available for us, what we see outside that can help us from different within the market, within the consultant. So I think it would be a good opportunity to also tackle this from different perspective. And just a few housekeeping stuff. I'm pretty sure that most of you that are aware. So this session is recorded and will be shared afterwards. Please feel free to ask anything during the session. We'll come back to the questions at the end of this session. And in case you have not signed up for the monthly Tackling SAP Security Together, where we tackle different aspects, next month's topic is all about BTP. Just a small spoiler there before we actually reveal it. All about BTP and attack vectors. So if you don't want to miss that, sign up or follow us on LinkedIn to know all about these monthly sessions that we actually do. Before I kick it off, just a quick overview on how we want to try to discuss this, myself and Phil. I'd like to we try to keep it open in terms of the discussion, questions around how we want to do that. So here are a few areas where we will be tackling, whether it is around how the challenges are, knowing how bad things can be or how bad things are for bigger companies. We want to see that mindset shifting from oh, do we have a perfect roles? Do we have perfect compliance measures? Whatever it is, to something that companies can actually utilize and use on a short-term basis, and then continue, of course. We'll be digging deeper into these tactical or strategic areas with Phil. And then from there, go towards how we can make those, because this is what audits are about when it comes, well, most part of the audits are around roles and authorizations. We try to also expand the way that we try to look into these stuff or assess these stuff, not just from roles and authorizations, but this is a big part of SAP and securing SAP. So we want to see how to make it at least fun. And I believe Phil has a few war stories there, and maybe not stories, but how he makes it fun with his clients or customers, and how to continually improve this process. It's not an easy process. It's not a short process, but it can be consumable, I believe. Then some quick where to start from the experts who usually deal with roles and authorizations. So Phil will give us a quick overview of where you can take it, where you can start with different aspects, not just around roles and authorizations, but maybe some controls that can support you, whether it is from detection or prevention, that can support moving that from a compliance perspective to more a proactive approach when tackling these different areas. And then finally, really looking at it from a bird's eye view, or the bigger picture here, where we look into areas that can support us directly. So as I say, buckle up, and hopefully you guys enjoy this. And please do ask any questions during the session. So to kick it off, the perfect role exists. Now, I think before we look into it, these are some of the stuff that we'd like to always go through, and we put down some myths and reality, Phil, when it comes to roles and authorization. So I have a few myths that we decided, or we put there. I'd like to discuss with you, Phil, your thoughts about these kinds of myths. So when it comes to SOD conflicts, here, they usually, what I see, that they are addressed after a project, after a transformation, after all of this. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, certainly that is the case, that a lot of the work that we do is often after a project where a larger system integrator has done a build, and the customer may not be happy. We'll certainly understand that it wasn't the best outcome from a SOD perspective. We're seeing a lot of a trend in SIs believing that they should be copying SAP standard roles. That's what SAP is saying. And then we're seeing a lot of customers, especially now in Fiori and Workzone, struggling with too much access, too many tiles, issues with screens loading because it's trying to render far too much content. And really, SAP standard roles are a starting point. They always were, they always have been, and can guide a consultant in what a configuration of a role may look like. But at the end of the day, principle of least privilege still stands. And so we often do end up, after a project has gone live, coming in and doing a redesign.
Oh,
now,
so yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so inside conflicts generally don't get a look in during a project. It's all about enablement, get the solution live, enable business process. so the business can go forward, and then the realization that users can do too much. Having said that, we do use our tool sets to build compliant roles, so can be utilized during a project, used as a checkpoint to say, okay, this is the design. We know the design supports the business process. Are there any inherent risks? Do we need to modify that design before it reaches production? Certainly post go live, that can be the baseline starting point, the acknowledgement that there is risk, and then another program of work is needed to break that apart and refine. But at least the business is live, the business is operational, and you've not slowed down a delivery project.
Absolutely. And I want to go back because one of the myths, and correct me if it's a myth or a reality for you, around the standards that come from SAP. So here we're talking now about the rule sets. So is GRC rule sets enough for compliance? Is it a myth or is this a reality? I hear it a lot.
It's a starting point as well, just like SAP standard roles. We've actually had this conversation recently with some SAP internal resources in the GRC space, and they very much admit that it was not a research-based approach, that it is, I guess, a functional view of where in an SAP solution I may be able to commit fraud, or where I could put the system at risk, system administration type critical functions. But it's not backed by research. So it is only a starting point. It is not comprehensive, and customers should not rely on it to keep them safe. It's a good starting point. It will address some external audit concerns, helping you to remove or reduce critical risk. But you should always also be reviewing the rule set of any tool that you choose to use to ensure that it covers your business processes and where your, process experts in your business see a potential for risk.
Makes sense. To shift gears a little bit towards it's not a new technology, but now we hear a lot around it, around BTP. So we see that going to BTP or the projects around BTP here, that customers think or have this conception that roles here are easier to actually deal with than your traditional SAP roles. A myth or a reality?
That's not the way I'm seeing it. So I am involved in implementation projects at the moment, implementing Workzone. To me, BTP, Workzone, the surfacing of tiles, structured tiles with menus and what have you, is no different to back in the day Enterprise Portal and then Fury, and even not very different to role menus. It's a presentation layer. You're controlling what the user can see and therefore what they can click or launch. So it's sort of a level of control where you're saying the back-end authority could be quite expensive, but you're controlling what they can see and click. So you're sort of limiting their entry point into the system. But at the end of the day, the front and the back should still align, should still follow the least privilege approach. That back-end account can still be breached, right? So to me, it still starts from the back end, quality role design, building up business roles, and a very considered approach to, I guess, the UX of those business roles, and making sure that what you're delivering in the BTP side of things enhances the user experience. I certainly wouldn't say that it's easier. It adds actually more layers of deployment, and when things change, there's more things to consider when you make those changes.
So in general, we have to align with whatever back end. So it does always start with back end. These roles just become
yes. I've found with BTP, so you can build locally, and you can map and assign local content. But if it's not back end driven, so based on role assignment to user drives what a user can see, that is unsustainable, because it's very hard to then understand why one user sees something different to another. So tying it all back to Fiori content exposed to Workzone, all role driven, using the access control capability within the Workzone sites to ensure that user only sees exactly what aligns to their back-end role. And then you can get the automation through IAS and the transformation scripts. So groups are created on the back again of a business role assigned to the user in the back end. Everything then just maps out and is automated.
Yeah.
Avoid local. That's what I've learned recently.
So, as in every session I've been hearing for the last year plus, AI,
Mm-hmm.
can it solve all our problems, myth or reality, when it comes to roles, when it comes to authorization, segregation of duties? Is this going to change at the moment? What do you see?
Yeah, I guess same. The past year or more, going to SAP conferences, all you hear is AI, AI, AI. It's like enough already. Um, we understand that it has strong potential around supporting decision making. So for companies like mine, where we're developing tools that are targeting, I guess, the less complex and the smaller companies that just need something simple, you're often presenting data to an administrator that is not a deep expert in security and authorizations. So AI will certainly play a role in supporting decision making. How should I remediate? How should I mitigate? What's the next thing I should do to lower my risk exposure? Um, we certainly want to get AI into our product, but I'm just not seeing it in the marketplace as actually being available. So it certainly could, but I just don't think it's there yet.
All right. And finally, one thing, I didn't see it a lot, but we saw it in a few projects, selected projects, where emergency access here is only considered as a formality and it should be just as a checkbox there. Myth or reality?
Checkbox, as in just saying you have it,
Yeah.
and that can come in different forms, like a user account unlocked and the password reset, and you're given the ability to use that. That may be approved through a ServiceNow ticket or something like that, right through to some customers who leave emergency access accounts permanently assigned to users so they can use them without approval. And then obviously in between is the best outcome where everything is requested and approved and reviewed.
Hmm.
To me, it's not a formality. It's an essential. It's something that audit always look for.
Absolutely.
And when audit come in, they often say, "Are you doing reviews? And are you controlling privileged access?" If you're doing nothing else, if you don't have a tool, if you are not addressing access risk, are you at least controlling privileged access and regularly doing reviews? So I think it's an essential if you want to start the journey of raising compliance and getting positive audit outcomes.
Makes sense. So before we wrap up this myths and reality, when you talk to customers, from these five myths here, or at least misconceptions, you can, of course, select other ones. But what
Yeah.
is the biggest misconception or myth here that they usually have about SAP security and compliance when it comes to this area of SAP security? I like to call it an area because it's one of many areas.
Many areas, yeah.
Yes.
I think we still see the belief that it won't happen to them.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the no monkey mantra, hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's still, unless it becomes top five C-suite problem, the the position of security in the C-suite's mind is always tactical. Yes, we're
Mhm.
failing audits, but we make a few changes, we respond with management recommendations, and they go away for another year. They don't want to acknowledge that a redesign and the implementation of a tool and formalization of process around the management of security can make audits fun and enjoyable and welcome. And it's just getting them over the line to say, look, if you take a proactive approach, audits become beneficial. You know, you want to learn how you can improve and do things better, and they don't need to be something that's feared. And again, with the tool set, you can be on the front foot with respect to always having evidence and feeling safe that you know you can respond to an external audit. I still see customers going, oh no, there's an audit coming. I hope all of our approvals are in place and there's nothing missing, and they don't pick a sample that we cannot prove was approved. So it's getting them past that point that they think they don't need to, or that they can, that being tactical is enough. It's getting them beyond that point is often the challenge.
Which I think really brings or hooks to this cycle, what I try to call is the cycle of chaos, where you have those complex roles, you have then ongoing risks, where you have an audit and then you start going after how can we solve this? How can we actually finalize this? And then this vicious cycle starts again every single year. A small here, maybe overview. What do CISOs, or at least SAP managers? So I know that sometimes the section of roles and authorizations, or at least SAP, what we see is not directly tied to the CISO, but we would like to always change that narrative, that scenario where CISO is definitely at the end, I would say, responsible / accountable for the security of their entire enterprise, including the SAP system. So in reality, what do usually CISOs and SAP managers face when it comes to this vicious or this cycle of chaos that we see during audits, during improving roles and authorizations, during all of these areas?
Yeah, I think it's aligned with what I was just saying around moving from tactical to strategic response, and viewing SAP as not just another application. I've worked on projects where 1,000 different applications are being consolidated when they look at doing an SAP implementation. But then the CISO and I guess the IT department just look at SAP and go, oh, that's just an app. That's just another thing in our inventory of applications that this business owns. But when they start to respect that it's the heart of everything, because it's their transactional system, it's their record of their financial record, when they get audited, it has to be perfect, and that they have to be able to demonstrate there's no way that their record of account could be anything other than true and correct, right? So CISO, SAP managers, and C-suite in general still do not respect that this application that is the heart of their business has to be rock solid from a compliance perspective. So complex roles and persistent risks, that's often what I see. Implementations that almost justify their existence by building something complex. That security doesn't need to be complex. And when I do projects where I estimate effort, I'm always asked, are you sure that's enough? I say, yeah, well, building roles is easy. Building roles is quick. The analysis, the design work, that can take a bit of time. The testing can take a bit of time. The role part is really quite easy. So getting people to understand that a role redesign can be simple, can be low impact, can be quick, and can get them to a much better place, even without implementing an access control tool. Reactive compliance, and that's again what I was saying about tactical versus strategic. Hoping it goes away every year is not sustainable, and sooner or later, those auditors will start to dig deeper. I do see that an audit will look at the usual suspects, like who can import a transport, who
Yeah,
can debug change, who can look at other people's spools, who can edit a payment file, whatever it might be. Um, there's always that's only like 10%. That's the surface risk. There's so much more risk underneath, and if you tactically respond to those, they'll dig deeper the next year because they're paid to find things, right? So being proactive, being on the front foot, getting your roles in order, reducing risk, and showing and demonstrating that you are reducing risk over time and that you're not perfect, and you welcome them finding things that you should address, but showing a proactive approach to being audit ready changes the conversation from a negative one to a positive one. And that will
absolutely.
make your CISOs and your C-suite, and it stops being a top five problem for them.
Well, hopefully they hear this and try to react as. But maybe we shift towards, shifting that mindset. Everybody wants this
Mm.
perfect designs. They want this perfect solution. Um, um, Here is really role design the only solution to making this happen. Um, um, but when I look into certain areas where different areas, or they want that perfect, whichever way you want to measure perfect
Mm.
for that instance, I see that it is sometimes unrealistic. So we try to then change it. How would you convince, let's say, stakeholders to shift that mindset that they have, instead of chasing perfection, to what extent perfection is, into something that is actually pragmatic, that word again, some steps that can help them be impactful for their overall, at least, especially in this area, section of SAP security.
Yeah, so a perfect role design is not achievable, and I guess that aligns with the thought process around a project, and then SOD remediation can come
Mhm.
afterwards. So, first and foremost, an SAP security model has to enable business process. It has to let the business function. Right? So then you can design a set of roles that permit that, but then it requires a tool to tell you, well, actually, deep down underneath, the user could do, certain things. How would you break those roles apart?
Yeah.
So then that's where it does take time. Uh, and it can take years to remediate the risk out of the security model. Also, you can get there quicker by accepting risk and applying mitigating controls. So the risk-based approach should, again, being tool-based, you don't know what risks you have until you apply a rule set to it. Starting with critical and high risk, starting with combinations on users that could be easily exploited and hard to detect, right? So um, the risk-based approach, but accepting that it will take time, but it should be part of continuous improvement. It should be part of your BAU process that
Mhm.
your administration team, yes, they might be busy with administering users, onboarding, offboarding, the day-to-day, but they should be looking at a tool that says, hey, you've got this critical risk, fix it. Put it into the weekly, fortnightly, monthly change request cycle process and start to show the auditors that you're chipping away at your risk. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I put there like detective controls. If you can't remediate, don't ignore it. The risk is still there. And I think a saying that I sometimes say is good people can do bad things. So there's plenty of examples of it, of fraud being committed. I remember a story of, I think, a nun in the US who was the treasurer for like um, I think it was a school, like a kindergarten. She'd been siphoning the cents off transactions, and by the time they found it, she'd taken $800,000, right? Because she realized, not being a bad person, she could do it, right? And it's often that when people realize they can do things, that they may do so. So not trusting your users is something that you must do. So if you have to permit a business process, you need a detective control. So that's very important. Yeah, periodic reviews. I believe that is the minimum audit requirement. If you do nothing else, are you at least validating the right roles on the right user at the right time? Emergency access. I still see support users with SAP All in production. Still happening. Yeah, you've got to pair your support users back to display only. Support users should not be updating or transacting on behalf of the business. They should be hand-holding, they should be screen sharing, they should be helping the users learn and make changes for themselves. So where an emergency is needed, it needs to be a managed process. Yeah, like I said, chipping away at risk, showing that, proactive approach to compliance, showing that over time you have a downward trend in total violation counts. Very important to have, the conversations with auditors become a positive experience. So meeting the minimum audit expectations. So yeah, reviews, emergency access, showing that you're addressing, identifying and addressing risk. As I said, and doing that changes the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think it is important, even when we are doing certain assessments, we try to, you could have a report that will give you over 100 pages, but is it actually pragmatic to tackle everything? So we try to also go through this risk-based approach where you have your low-hanging fruits, you have your
Yeah,
areas where it's quite critical, then let's tackle them, let's mitigate them. If we cannot, there's always these compensating controls, whether it is around detecting them, whether it is around reacting. Especially
yeah,
when you said SAP All, I don't think we're
mm,
going to ever see that a company doesn't have so many SAP All assigned. It's just how can we mitigate different areas? It takes time to, yes, reduce that, but how can we also maybe detect what happens when somebody has SAP All? Can they actually do, or can it be abused? I know that when it comes to SAP, insider threat becomes as the example you just gave.
yeah,
It comes to the nun.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know, maybe
yeah,
she wanted it for a greater cause, but
yeah. That's right. Benevolent. Um, yeah, look, we have template support roles that pass audit. They are production versus non-production. They're display versus create change. And we implement them at customers, and everyone screams,
yeah,
"Oh, but what if? What if?" You know. But then with a good emergency access process that caters for out of hours and weekends and cutovers and upgrades, that as long as you've got a solid process and approvers and backup approvers, there's a mechanism. So the day-to-day access can be reduced, and we can get customers to give up SAP all.
yeah,
And if you do get the opportunity at Greenfield, right at the start, when you first stand up your development client, ban SAP all. Don't even start with it. Even integration accounts, system accounts that you may not have an access requirement for those accounts. Start with nothing. You can trace, you can get issue 53s, you can build up the security of those roles so that when you get to production, they're working and there's still no SAP all needed.
yeah.
So auditors
Considering,
are not finding that and going, hey, why have you given SAP all to an integration account? It could be an open door.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
considering that in the greenfield, you add security during that entire
Yes.
engagement. So
Yeah.
maybe to move forward, where can organizations start? I know that based on what we have spoken about in the last few minutes, um, they really can't fix everything, either because of the findings are too much. There's limited resources. There's no clear program, SAP security program. So where would they, within your experience with your customers, where should they start first?
Yeah, so I think some of the things that we've been discussing,
Yeah.
you know, the idea of the security redesign project, not always what a business wants to hear. But it is the perfect way to reduce the security footprint. And in doing so, you can halve the risk exposure without even identifying that risk exposure. You can reduce the security footprint to be aligned to what people do. And if you do it in a way that you give them back what they use, there's very minimal impact.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the business can go through, you know, a light UAT. Yeah, I can still do my day job. I can still do my month-end processes, yet no impact, maybe a few defects. You get through that redesign, you deploy it, you delete the legacy roles, you get rid of anything that was left behind, because you don't want that to get reassigned. You've already halved your footprint. We've done security assessments using our tool and have, you know, thousands of violations. And through a usage-based redesign project, where we redesign security based on what people
Mm-hmm.
use, we're seeing 60 and 70% reduction in excess risk
Well,
before we do any sort of targeted SOD remediation. So it's worth it. And you know, we often do it in around 100 days
wow.
of effort, right? It's not a big project, given the benefits you get at the end, where you're far more compliant. Audit are going to find a lot less things wrong with your security model, and you can go forward with confidence that you're clean again.
Yeah.
And if you do align it to organizational structure and positions and keep it job relevant and document it well so it's easy to keep updating, you should always keep your security model aligned to what people need and continue to avoid access creep.
Maybe while we are breaking this circle of chaos, when it
Mm.
comes to audit specifically around that area, how can we ensure that improvements always, or at least don't really fade away when a specific audit is over? Because we have those customers that audit starts, it's over, they have a huge amount of stuff to do. They want things to be done yesterday or 1 month ago.
Yeah.
So how can we make sure that these improvements really stay this continuous improvement, I would say, of the different controls there?
So I think what I've seen is, um, management, C-suite, key stakeholder engagement, buying into the need for a tool, and once having that tool, appreciating that it is progressing. So, um, I guess in respect of SURPASS itself, we put a lot of focus on trend analysis. So being
Mhm.
able to show over time continuous improvement and reduction in risk. If risk goes up, being able to explain why it went up and
Okay.
then address and continue and keep driving it down. So showing progress over time is paramount. It's key to showing that the success you got from the redesign project is long lasting and is not being undone through lack of focus, I guess. And once auditors know you have a tool, they want to see the tool. So if the auditors then come in a year later and say, "Oh, great, you had a fresh baseline. We can see that you reduced a lot of risk. You've addressed previous audit findings. You've improved your policy and procedure, and we can see that you're adhering to that. You're doing what you said you would do, but your risks are going back up. So that's where companies that think they can manage segregation of duties without a tool." Um, will always go backwards.
Sense.
It is a slow process, just to, I
Yeah.
guess, touch on that point. It can be slow, but it is achievable. And I think I've got a good example of that. We had a customer where one of the big four did the implementation project. The customer could see what was coming and knew that the security model would not be correct for them,
Yeah.
but they finished the project, offboarded the SI. We came in and we did a simple redesign, just cleaned up the business roles, didn't do too much change of security, put in SURPASS, and they started with about 5,000 violations.
Wow.
Now, in our tool, if you've got something 100 different ways, we count it once. So 5,000 in SURPASS might still be 200,000 in GRC access control, right? So 5,000's an average sort of medium level of violation. 2 years later, they hit zero. And that's through low-hanging fruit. So what's the next risk we will look at this week? Or
Absolutely.
this, and make the change. Involve the key user, they test it, yep, great, go to production, risk levels come down. This particular customer has 24 detective controls. So it's a very small portion of that 5,000 that had to be accepted and
Yeah.
controls had to be put in place. So yeah, it took 2 years. They hit zero. We actually had a bug fix because we never designed SURPASS to handle a zero count in the trend, right? It didn't know what to do with zero. So it was a good thing to happen.
Zero. I'm leaving
Um,
this organization, not doing it.
yeah.
Well, to look at it then, and now from this bird's eye view, making this circle of chaos sustainable, more ways of looking into it. And I want to maybe touch base on a small area. How would you balance between, from your experience, from your interaction with your customers, how would you balance those detective controls with any kind of other mitigating controls or preventive controls in that
Yeah.
perspective?
I think again that comes down to the low-hanging fruit. If
Okay.
you identify a risk on users that is maybe across all users, example might be one I always see, batch administration administrator Y, cross-client admin in the base role, or SPO zero, SP01 in the base role, and it's like, okay, that's a junior mistake. So just
Yeah.
because you trace it doesn't mean you need to give it, right? And a lot of those sort of kernel level authorities do not need to be provided. But when they're given, then all users can see other users' spools or something like that, or other users' background jobs. Um, that can be a very quick fix, right? But you might have some users that need to do that. So that's a detective control. No one should have that, but these 5 users can. But then you might have something like anyone in this business can raise a purchase rec and do a goods receipt. Right? And so you might want to put a preventative control in place that says, but the same user can't do
Yeah.
both parts of it or something, right? And so that relies on a user exit. But there's benefit in that because you don't then have someone doing a detective control. You've just put a system-based control in place that blocks that possibility. And then in your access control solution, you can turn off that risk. You don't have to track it anymore because you know through the system that it's impossible. So to me, preventative controls are really about the scale and the benefit of implementing, or obviously engaging a developer, making a customization, that would prevent a fraudulent activity versus it's not worth that effort for the level of risk that it is and the number of users that you might be monitoring.
Yeah. And from that perspective, when we are talking really and to hitting back on this risk-based approach, I think it is quite important in terms of SAP security because there is a lot to do. And I do believe that you have given us a nice example around how you guys have allocated 5,000 different violations into
Mm.
addressing this through risk-based approach, which is something that is quite good. And I think a lot of customers really need to go through that. I've seen reports that do not end, as I said before, through violations, and it is expected to have it actually
And,
completed.
and that's a good point. And that's why in our product, we changed the rule set design to have a grouping feature. So,
Okay.
as I said before, if I might have a risk about, I don't know, maintaining GLs,
Yeah.
we know there's 50 T codes that can let you do that. And if GRC ran over the top of a finance user, it might report 2,000 rows of violation. Whereas we group that up and say, well, there's only 5 violations. They can create a journal, they can change, they can delete, they can post or something like that. And so we make the data more consumable because we know when we've seen customers get that 2 million rows of violations, does not even fit in a spreadsheet. They
Yeah.
just go, oh, what do I do with that? Right. So it's looking for a tool that helps you consume the data is really the step you need to take. You need to evaluate what is it going to tell you that you could then possibly action. And so looking for a tool that says, at a high level, this is how you would address the low-hanging fruit. This is how you can
Hmm.
make most inroads into your violation counts without drowning in data.
In data.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of when it comes to these areas, definitely I would always try to, this manual process is impossible to finalize. So a
Yeah.
tool that helps you deliver that can get you there. So for our takeaways, if you can give actually one piece of advice, and this is where I'm going to say a CISO, because it's not just the SAP identity access management managers or SAP managers for building this long-term resilience, I would say, or SAP security resilience, what would it be?
Um, yeah, that's challenging to summarize those 5 points into one takeaway. Um, I think to me, when I looked at this question, I came back to that first point that you can do a redesign with minimal impact. That if you are struggling with audit, you know that your security model is out of date, not aligned to, when it was built to how you now run your business, that it can make a significant difference, but it can be done with minimal impact to your end users. And to not, I guess, fear doing that, because that can set you on the path to getting compliant.
Yeah.
It always is the step one. Once you get to that new baseline, you cannot keep it that way without a tool, right? I'm not just saying that because I have a tool, right? It's what I've seen in the past is that once you get to the point of, oh, this is clean, it's easy to administer, everyone has the right access, eh, culturally, you end up with a situation where users have always been able to request something more, and managers just approve because they don't have any evidence to say why they shouldn't approve.
Yeah.
But then when you have a tool that says, don't approve that, you're adding risk. And so, yeah, it's almost like computer says no, right? The tool is saying, no, don't do that. You start to arm your administrators with the ability to push back and keep the model clean by taking that risk-based view and the identification of risk within that process. So, yeah, to me, do a redesign, get your fresh baseline, put in a tool, improve your processes, and having done all that, it's it's you are then well armed to stop the culture of I request it, I get it, and keep it to I guess what I call a access by design security model. We don't make changes. It's already fit for purpose. It suits the business process. It enables that. if anything needs to be changed, it's a design decision, and it applies to everyone in that same role. And so, yeah, getting clean, staying clean, breaking that culture of access request, will keep the security model healthy for years to come.
Absolutely. And I do believe that with also these, with the shift now towards the cloud, well, it didn't start just now, but the shift towards the cloud, during the session, you said that, during a greenfield is where you start. I do agree, like, get your security, I would say, culture in place where even through that transformation, don't wait, even if you're going through a brownfield transformation, or an avocado transformation where everything looks everything looks
Yeah,
green from the outside, but it's actually brown from the inside, right? So whether you are
yeah,
still using your integrations, your custom stuff, your custom code, your roles, it is important to include security from the get-go when it comes to that.
absolutely, absolutely. And even pre-transformation, there is certainly value in reducing your security footprint, less to migrate, less to transform, less to test, right? So there's
Absolutely.
never a wrong time when a transformation project is happening or about to happen to put the focus on security.
Absolutely. Well, Phil, before I think we can open up to questions with the attendees this morning, would you like to say any final words? Thank you for joining us to this month's session.
Yeah,
And
thank you for having me. I know we've spoken about doing this many times, so it was good
yes,
to
we did.
finally align and get to do this. And yeah, hopefully, I provided some takeaways. It's a very big topic, and I could talk for hours and hours on these topic areas. So yeah, hopefully the audience gets something from this conversation.
I can imagine. And thank you for having